Jade, a beautiful gemstone that's different than most in that it's not faceted. Instead, it's carved and polished. So let's say this is a carved and polished green gemstone. Green gemstone. As you picture what does jade look like, here's an image of the most expensive jade necklace ever sold. It's called the Hutton Midavani, and it sold for $27.8 million just a couple years ago because people treasure this translucent, bright green color. When I see this and I think of the cultural significance of jade, this song comes to mind that goes, "Beads of jade for beauty, you must proudly show it. Now add a cricket just for luck, and even you can't blow it." Don't be embarrassed for me, because I nailed it. Or as the song sings, "Well, honey, I've seen worse." Right? This is Mulan. And that ties us into part of the cultural significance. But it hasn't only been important in Chinese and Asian cultures. It's been important throughout much of the world during prehistory. When gemologists refer to jade, they're actually talking about two different minerals. One is called nephrite. And nephrite is the mineral variety that was treasured throughout Chinese culture for thousands and thousands of years. But then, in around 1700, a deposit of another green mineral is discovered and started to be mined, and it's called jadeite. And jadeite is this over here with this stunning green color. Nephrite's a little duller green. They're different minerals, they have different crystallographies, different hardnesses, but they're grouped under the same name as jade. As we go through the history of jade, let's talk a little bit about this cultural significance. Cultural significance and its significance. And of course it's been ornamental, right? But it's been ornamental for a long, long time in terms of jewelry. But it's not just that. It's been for tools, and it's also been for weapons throughout prehistory. One of the interesting things about it for tools and weapons is that it actually holds an edge harder than raw iron. And so during the Stone Age, many weapons and tools were made from this material. Let me show you an example of a weapon made from jade. This is from New Zealand, from the Maori people. They have clubs and kind of swords that were made from jade. So that's another place besides Asia where it has been treasured. Another place where jade was very important both for ornament, tools, and weaponry was in Central America, where all sorts of different peoples, the primary mines were in Guatemala, but jade was treasured for the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Olmecs and the smaller people groups as well. In fact, when Cortez came to visit Mexico at the first time, the Aztecs offered jade to him as one of their top treasures, and he was insulted by the gift. And much of the early jade that was given to the conquistador types was actually just destroyed. The place where it is the most treasured, though, is China, and their influence has spread throughout all of Asia. And they refer to jade as the imperial gem. In many times in history, jade has actually been worth more than gold. Where in the West, we treasure diamonds and gold as the most valuable material, China actually treasures jade as that level. They associate many different qualities with jade, positive things like virtue and resilience, strong character. These are all personality traits that people associate with jade, and so when they wear it, they're reminded to be this type of people. The symbol for jade in China, I looked it up as well. It's this symbol, which is, I think it's called U. That's interesting. So let's just kind of keep going through here. I guess what we could say finally under this is throughout history, so in Chinese history, I guess I already mentioned it once, is that nephrite is jade for Chinese history. Until it's in the 13th century, a farmer discovers jadeite. So let's say in 13th century, farmer discovers jadeite. Now, not much is made of this until around the 1700s. In the 1700s, China actually goes to war with Burma because they discover this. There's a farmer in Burma. And when you hear Burma, of course, nowadays that country is called Myanmar, you should be thinking about rubies. That is a land full of gem treasures. China goes to war with Burma in the 1760s to try to take over the jadeite mines. They lose. Well, some reports say they win. Anyways, the trade starts after that war. All right, so that's the history and background of jade. We went into it so much because of how, diamond and gold is so significant to us. Well, jade is significant for the other half of the world. Roman numeral 2 is going to be jade mineralogy. Let's start off by talking about the two minerals separately. So let's first talk about nephrite. Nephrite jade. It is a fibrous amphibole, which might not mean too much to you. We're going to put it down here. Fibrous amphibole. Amphibole is the mineral species name that it is. And when you think fibrous amphibole, the word I actually want you to picture in your mind is asbestos, which has many negative connotations, right, for making cancer. But what asbestos minerals are is they're these fibrous things where if you had a rock of a fibrous amphibole, all the crystals look like this. They're these elongate things, and they're not just going in one direction. They're probably crisscrossing one another, and they're making this interwoven, really densely woven texture. Okay, so that's kind of the sketch we're making for it. We're going to say that it has a matted texture, matted interwoven texture. We don't see it at that crystal level in jade because what we look for is just rocks with a really fine-grained texture. But if we look under a microscope, that's what we'd see is all these fibers that are interwoven together. The chemical formula for nephrite is not something I'd want you to memorize. It's really complicated. It's calcium 2. I'm going to put it down here just for completion. MgFe can occur in the same crystal lattice spot interchangeably, which is what that symbol is for. And then it's silica 8 O22. Oh, what happened to my pen here? O22 OH2. So that's what nephrite jade is like. The hardness of nephrite jade is a 6, which isn't very hard, right? Hardness equals 6, but because of its matted woven texture, it's exceptionally tough and resistant to breaking. So we would call that tenacity in mineral speak. It has a very high tenacity, which makes it good for jewelry or tools or weapons, etc. Now let's compare that to the other mineral that is also called jade, jadeite. And this is a different kind of mineral. It's a pyroxene. Again, not maybe a word that matters to you unless you have mineralogical training, but this is a, let's say, interlocking crystals of pyroxene. Pyroxene, that's how you spell pyroxene. The chemical formula is different. It's a sodium mineral, sodium, aluminum, silica 2O6. So if you compare those chemical formulas, they're nothing like one another. They form in completely different geologic environments. They are not related except for in color and in this tenacity and strength. If we were to draw a rock of jadeite, here we go, then what we would want to do is draw a bunch of crystals, make them boxy polygons, like rectangles, that just, I drew this too big. This is going to take too long. All right. I want you to make them boxy, filling up the whole thing. And this is zoomed in very high because very high-grade jadeite is really fine-grained. We wouldn't want to be able to see the coarseness of the crystals with our naked eye. We would need to only be able to see them with a microscope. Anyways, you get the idea. We fill in the rest. The hardness of jadeite is just a little bit harder than nephrite. It's 6.5 to 7, so still relatively soft, but it has this really well close-packed crystalline texture that makes it also have a very high tenacity. The geologic occurrences of nephrite and jadeite are different than one another, right? Because they're completely different minerals. Let's talk about nephrite first. Oh, so this is actually supposed to say, let's do this. We're going to go here. Let me erase this. We're going to have this say geologic occurrences. Geologic occurrences. What processes in nature are actually making the nephrite and the jadeite? Well, for nephrite, the word is metasomatism, which is maybe not a word you've heard of, but we have, I know, talked about hydrothermal fluids. So I'm going to introduce metasomatism to you right now. And what metasomatism means is that it's an alteration by hydrothermal fluids. Okay? That is what metasomatism means. And what I specifically am referring to is if you have, let's say, magmas that are heating country rock, you can get these very silica-rich hydrothermal fluids that begin to alter the country rock. And when they're interacting with, let's say this, hydrothermal fluids alter calcium-rich sedimentary rocks. You'll go through this kind of metamorphic alteration reaction to produce nephrite jade. Now the process there is different than what it is for jadeite. Jadeite forms in a really special plate tectonic environment. The density of jadeite, which I guess we could have included right here, in fact I'll go back up and put it, it's 3.4 grams per centimeter cubed. This is a very high density, and that density results from very high pressure. So jadeite, we're going to put here is that it is a very high pressure mineral that forms in a subduction zone environment. Mineral that forms in subduction zone environment. Remember what subduction zones are? These are places where two plates are converging upon one another and then one subducts below the other, right? We have a plate, it comes down and it goes below the other. Well, jadeite's forming in this kind of region, right? Here's water and stuff, right? Volcanoes form here like Mount St. Helens. Well, jadeite's forming here in a place that's very cold, but also, and we're going to put the word deep here, in a deep subduction zone environment. The reaction that occurs is you take a feldspar. This is one of the most common minerals in the crust, and the feldspar is called albite, and it reacts in response to temperature and pressure. Okay, heat and pressure, I guess we should have put a T here, T and P. And it produces a reaction that goes to quartz plus jadeite. The type of rocks that it's associated with, so we'll put a little A here, and then let's just say this. This is maybe getting a little too deep for the class, but we're going to say associated with blue schist and serpentinite. Those are the rocks that you'd find around jadeite if you're on like a mining expedition and you're looking to find it. Now, the last thing for this little mini lecture is we're going to talk about mining jade. We can mine jade in two main places. One is an alluvial setting. Whoops, we zoomed out. So zoom in. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're mining in two different environments. One is the alluvial environment, and when you're mining from an alluvial environment, this type of jade is called river jade. And so river jade is boulders in streams, where people just walk through streams and ancient streams, right, in their paleo channels, flipping over stones, looking to try to find jade. Jade's very hard and resistant, and so it can be preserved in this alluvial environment. So let's say hard stones preserved in alluvial environment. And this was the ancient source. For hundreds and thousands of years, this is where jade was primarily mined. Well, a lot of that has been depleted now, and so there's now hard rock mining. And this type of jade is called mountain jade. Mountain jade is pulled directly from the primary source. So let's say, and people are using really highly mechanized equipment or low-end equipment, so we won't even mention the equipment. Let's just say that this is the primary source mined from bedrock. This is today's modern source, but there is a lot of ethical, so let's say this, much ethical and environmental damage that's currently occurring as people are stripping mountainsides of jade. All right, and that's the introduction to jade. We'll finish up next time with a little bit more of the gemology. See you then.